I'm Travis Brown, founder and CEO of Mojo Up Marketing and Media. And this is my podcast where I talk to the most successful Black and brown business executives who've broken through the barriers of today's business culture. Welcome to the Diverse and Talented Podcast. I'm your host, Travis Brown, and today I have with me no other than Stan Chen. He's the CEO of Telamon, and I'm excited for him to be here with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Travis. Happy to be here.
Now, I've been on you for a couple years to get you in this chair today, so I'm super excited that we finally made this happen.
That was your schedule, not mine. I've been ready to go.
Now, we're going to talk about, a lot of times we jump back to how it all started, but I want to start present day. You're the CEO of a massive company here in Indiana. You're taking over a legacy from your father. Your sister and you are involved in this business. What is that like to step into those shoes and try to lead a company in today's environment?
Yeah, I think early on, for sure, there's a lot of trepidation, a lot of nervousness around that, some insecurities. And I think that continues even to this day. I think all of us struggle in different respects with some level of insecurity. Yeah. And so from my perspective, there's always this question of, am I worth it? Did I earn it? Can I prove to people that I can do this job? And so I think there is an element where I've been able to mature some of just getting past that. Because at the end of the day, those are these unanswerable questions in your head. Yeah. And it's never enough, right? And so to be able to, at some point in time, get comfortable in your own skin and say, look, it is what it is. I'm going to do the best job that I can do. And we'll go from there, right?
So how do you evaluate yourself at this stage in the game? With, am I effective or not? Am I doing a great job leading? Because I think those insecurities, even for me in my position running this business, and I'm sure listeners, no matter where they are, it's kind of like I'm fighting through that to figure out if I am doing a good enough job. And how do you reconcile that in your head?
Yeah, there's probably a few different ways that I think about it. There's a really kind of quantitative way that we would think about it from a business standpoint. We're going to look at our revenue. We're going to look at our profitability. We're going to look at our return on capital. Those are the metrics on our scorecard. And so, if we're improving in those areas, then that's great. And so that's one view. But honestly, for me, and again, I think this speaks to some of those insecurities as a leader, part of what I ask myself is, am I attracting talent? Do I have an executive team that is coming where we're attracting good talent and retaining good talent? Yeah. Both my direct reports, but also even kind of the layer or two below that, some of the top talent that we have in the organization, because part of what they're thinking about beyond the opportunity is the leadership of the company. Yeah. And so I feel like if I'm doing a good job and people have a level of confidence in where I'm taking the company, then they'll want to be there. And so that becomes my maybe unofficial measuring stick.
Interesting. In my research, I know that you're a Brebeuf kid, from here.
Yeah, love Brebeuf.
But University of Penn and then Stanford. Yeah. Talk a little bit about that journey, because that's not easy education. Yeah. That's the highest of high level of education, and how important that was to your foundation and to now. Yeah.
So education is critical for our family. That's always been something that's been drilled into us, both my sister and myself, ever since we were kids. And both of my parents really value education, right? That kind of paved their way in terms of where they are today. And so it was clear that was what we needed to do. When I was in school, I remember both in high school and in college, I had a number of peers who were working to pay their way through school, particularly in college. And so I asked my parents, I said, I should get a job. I should help kind of pay my way through school. And so, different philosophies in different families, but in our family, my parents very quickly came back and said, your job is school. And so you do that job to the best of your abilities. If you have extra time and energy where you think you can go work, then that means you need to be studying harder. And so that's what I applied it to. And so wanted to go to the most competitive schools that I could go to, and loved the ethos, particularly at Stanford, where across different business schools, I felt like one of the things that they really preached was that you could learn from failure. In some sense, failure was a badge of honor, particularly in that Silicon Valley startup mentality. If someone, worked for 8 startups that failed, maybe that wasn't so good. But working for 1 or 2 startups that failed, there's a lot of lessons learned in that. And I love that.
Well, it's interesting. In a lot of cases, the people that are really successful in entrepreneurship, it actually is that. There were 7 that failed before that one that hit.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And having the mindset that, one, that's okay in our culture to do that and fail. Yeah. Because I think in a lot of cases, failure is viewed as this thing that if you're good, you shouldn't fail.
Yeah.
Instead of to be good, that you have to fail.
That's right.
Right. So I think that's something I think we got to do a better job in our culture, to really embrace that.
Absolutely.
Now I dug deep and I found a little sliver that said that you had some marketing experience with the Oakland A's.
That's right.
Talk about that. I'm intrigued with that.
So I always tell folks there's one job that I would leave my present job for on a dime, and that would be to be the general manager of a baseball team. If someone came calling, I'm out, and so my family knows that. And unfortunately, no one's calling. That's okay. But I always had an interest in sports management. Baseball is my favorite sport, but love all sports. And so when I was at Stanford, I wanted to get some exposure in that. I knew long term I wanted to be back in the family business.
Yeah.
But there was a window there to explore different things. And so I was actually thinking a little bit about, okay, what would it look like to go down that path? And at Stanford, there was a wonderful professor, George Foster, there that has some great connections with various clubs, especially in that area. So was able to get me connected with the A's. And so I actually did 2 internships in my summer in business school. My formal internship was with British Telecom. And so this was a kind of global corporate strategy role in telecommunications. So all kind of prepping me from a family business standpoint. And then on the side, I was working for the Athletics and doing some work with their marketing department.
I'm always fascinated to see what people were willing to do to learn versus, some short-term mindset is like, well, if they're not paying me enough, I'm not doing it, right? And I think if you go back far enough, and some of us are old enough, like internships was built to learn and develop your craft to position you for what's next. Talk about a little bit about that and what you think people should be doing today to learn, to grow, to figure out, maybe with some patience to get to where they want to go.
Yeah. I always think, and I think I was taught this particularly in college and in business school, that you have this opportunity as a student where it's less threatening and you can reach out to alum or people in the network and say, hey, I'd just love to have coffee and pick your brain, right? Learn about your career, do that kind of networking. And to me, I think that's a skill that you just keep for the rest of your life, right? As many times as you can, just to be able to have coffee with someone and learn about their job, their role, their challenges. To me, I think that's wonderful. So there is kind of this lifelong learner mentality, and different people will go about learning different ways.
Sure.
Reading books, going to classes. I think all of that's fantastic. I think the one-to-one, just having coffee, being able to interview someone effectively on the sly is a wonderful way of learning.
Right now, when you think about a business culture, if you could have coffee with a person, right? If you could just make that text or have that connection, who's somebody or a couple people that you'd like, man, it would be great to sit down and pick their brain.
Yeah. So one of the guys that I always pay attention whenever he's talking is Jamie Dimon. So that's, maybe a popular guy, but I just think he has really good experience and really good perspective on just the macro environment of what's going on. Recently, I've been fascinated, maybe along with everyone else, just with NVIDIA's rise around Jensen Huang. Jensen's Taiwanese, and I'm Taiwanese, and so there's kind of also that shared interest in terms of his story and very humble beginnings of how he's built the business. So those are a couple of people that come to mind of who I'd love to be able to sit and learn from, interview.
I'm a golfer. I love to golf. And so one of the things that some of my buddies we throw around is like, who would you put in your foursome?
Right.
If you had a chance, you could just have anybody come and play some golf.
Yeah.
You talked about your background, Taiwanese.
Mm-hmm.
You've been here all your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do you still stay connected to the culture?
Yeah.
Because your parents, I think, came here maybe in like 85 and you've grew up in Carmel, Indiana. Like, how do you stay connected to your culture?
Yeah, so you're right. So born and bred in Indiana. This is all I've known. And in fact, when I was growing up, there were a couple kind of challenges going on. One was that my parents were building a business at that point in time, and so they were busy. And two, my father, even now, I mean, he's been in Indiana for 50 years, but even now speaks broken English. Mm-hmm. Back then, definitely had broken English, and was struggling with that as a business person. And so my parents very much wanted my sister and I to learn English, so it was English only in the home with us. They would speak Mandarin to each other, but with us, it was predominantly English. And so growing up, I didn't speak Mandarin very well at all. And so I will tell you that the way that I've tried to connect with the culture is by working on my Mandarin. I work with a professor at Butler, have just kind of private tutoring a couple times a week. I've been doing that now at this point in time, probably for 10 years. So it's slow going. It's 2 hours a week of language instruction, and I don't really do much homework on the side. I probably could and should do more flashcards, but I do what I can. It is fascinating to me, especially right now in an age with AI and with technology, where on the newest Samsung phone, you can have a phone call and it will translate live from foreign languages, right?
Amazing,
and so
right?
people say, well, why do you need to learn a foreign language? It's not the language, it's the culture. And it has been fascinating to me as I've been learning Mandarin and improving my Mandarin, how much it has helped me understand my culture, my parents, my relatives. Oh, that's why they think the way they think, because even in the language structure, right, it's built up with certain vocabulary or certain meaning. And so to me, I think that's been a way that I've been able to connect better with my Asian roots.
And so I want to bring your family into this a little bit, and you can talk at whatever comfort level, but talk a little about your family, your kids, like that, and then on top of that, you're even one more step removed from the culture, from what they know. And how do you navigate that?
Yeah. That also has been tough. So married, 3 kids, 14, 13, and 5-year-old.
Okay.
Again, I think one of the ways that we have tried to address that, so our kids are at the international school, and we selected that school for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons was language and culture.
Yeah.
And so international school has a Mandarin track, and so has a number of teachers that are from China and Taiwan. That's kind of the requirement at ISI, is that whatever language track you're in, that's the native tongue, right? And so again, you're picking up not only the language, but also the culture through that. But for us, and my wife's Caucasian, yes, there is a desire to make sure that our kids also understand that Chinese culture aspect of it, but also just broadly to understand culture, to understand differences, to understand that it's a big world with a lot of different people, a lot of different ways of thinking about things and viewing the world. And how do we make sure that as global citizens, we understand that, we can appreciate that, and not, jump to conclusions or, naturally run into some conflict just because of cultural differences. Yeah.
And then as you think about your leadership, your family in America today, and I know that in the Black culture, like there's definitely been some challenges with integration and people and what's going on. Then there became the movement around what was happening in the Asian culture. Being somebody who's been here and your kids here, did that affect you? Did that have an impact or not?
Yeah. One of the things that's always interesting, particularly within the Asian community, is this idea of the model minority. And so even there, within America at least, there's this view of, Asians are the model minority, potentially in part because they may be quieter, they may be less, self-assuming.
Educated.
That's right. Educated, income level might be higher or whatever. And so you navigate through those things and try and figure out, is that a good thing or a bad thing for us? And so, I do think that there's elements with all kind of immigrants where, look, you want to come into the U.S., you want to work hard, you want to be able to provide for your family, you want to be able to move up the ladder. It's very clear statistically that in our country that has been easier for certain people groups and harder for other people groups, right? And you look at housing policies and you look at bus lines and all of those things that we know about. I think from an Asian standpoint, there is a opportunity and to a certain extent an obligation to have a greater voice into some of those areas, right? And to be able to speak on behalf of kind of the broader immigrant community, not only the Asian community, right? Because at the end of the day, our country is going to be stronger if we can have that diversity and if we can have that integration across different people groups. And so we need to play our part in that.
Yeah. Obviously, our podcast is focused on really highlighting stories of Black and brown executives, business owners, in an attempt to just tell more stories and really be a forefront leader in this conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And right now in America, there's kind of an attack on that right now. That do we need it? Why do we have it? Yeah. There's all these different sides around it. As a leader and a minority leader, how have you built a culture that has had some focus on DEI?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, from a leadership standpoint, you always have to lead by example. And so there is an element when I think about our executive team and when I think about our top talent of, are we making sure that we are providing pathways for everyone, regardless of gender, regardless of skin color? And so I need to be able to take the lead on that. And I'm very proud. I feel like at Telamon, we have a very diverse team, and we've been able to lean into that. And that's been a key topic of conversation with our VP of HR as well, when we're looking at, again, 2-3 levels down in the organization and we're identifying talent. Hey, let's make sure that we have diversity of talent in there, right? And that what we're representing kind of the entire employee base that we have. One of the things that we do from a Telamon standpoint is that we look at our hiring and we look at our promotion, not only just in terms of percentages of whether, again, it's going to be female or ethnic minority, but also relative to where our offices are. And so we are comparing our percentages not in a vacuum, but to, hey, if we have an office in California, well, what's the racial makeup in California? And are we representing that well? That's going to be different than our office in Oklahoma. And so that's fine. And so how does our office in Oklahoma do compared to the demographics there? And again, we're just trying to be representative, right? We're not trying to over-index on one or the other. We just want to be representative of the population around us. That means that we're giving everyone a fair shake.
I love the mindset around from a leadership perspective and what it represents in the different communities that you guys operate in. One of the things for the CEOs, I'm always curious is, where are you learning? How are you growing? And then there's an inherent amount of stress that's placed on any leader in that type of role. How do you handle whatever you view as stress?
Yeah. So, from a learning standpoint, we talked about being able to have coffee with as many people as possible. I think that's been a part of it. Certainly, I try to read some good books as well. That's always an opportunity. It's fascinating. So I am a fast reader just in terms of actually going through the words. But I am a slow reader in the sense of when I'm reading a good book, it makes me stop. Every page or every chapter, I'm like, oh, wow. Gosh, this changes so many different things, or it should have an impact on my life in so many different ways. So I'm going through a book right now. I'm like 6 months into this. Daniel Kahneman, who recently passed away, Nobel Prize winner, wrote Thinking Fast and Slow. And it has made me think slow and read slow because he's so insightful in terms of things that I need to do differently or ways that we're naturally jumping to conclusions, but it's maybe not the way that we should be processing through it. He has kind of this type 1, type 2 thinking in the brain. And so I think those kinds of things are helpful to be able to slow down and kind of reassess. Am I going about this the right way?
And then when you think about stress, right, and tough decisions, I know a lot of leaders through COVID had to make tough decisions coming out of that, downsizing, right-sizing, getting the right team, letting go. There's so many things that come into your role. Talk about what do those tough decisions look like for you, and how do you handle those?
I think the decisions are not any different than the tough decisions that you run into or any business leader runs into, right? You have tough customer decisions, you have tough personnel decisions a lot. These are the things that really keep you up at night, particularly when it impacts people. And there's also just kind of the challenge of balancing it all, right? And you're trying to do well in your business, but you're also trying to take care of your family. You're trying to be involved in the community. Again, you know this, right? You know this very well. For me, and I think we share this, I'm a man of faith. My faith is very important to me. And so, the way that I can tell that I have not been spending enough time praying and in the Word when I get consumed with all these things. And so to me, that's a little bit of a trigger and a warning of all right, I need to take a step back, get away from the business, and even maybe get away from the family for a little bit and have some time with God. And just to be able to kind of pray through that and reorient around what are priorities, what's really important in the scheme of things. Let's kind of build that back up from the ground in terms of here's foundational pieces. And then inevitably, once you have a chance to do that, you tend to realize that a lot of the problems and the stressors that we are spending time on actually aren't that important in the scheme of things. They are important and they need to be addressed, but they're secondary.
I can't tell you how important to hear you say that was for me. I mean, everybody can adapt to it and filter that and figure out what that means to them. But for me, going through what we're going through, trying to build a company and trying to make all these decisions, run tight budgets and be people first and all those things.
Yeah.
I mean, that spoke, a really loud, clear message to me. So thank you really for sharing that.
Yeah.
As you continue on your leadership journey, like where do you go next? Not from a like you're gonna leave because the A's are calling, but like what are you trying to drive to build, create?
Yeah. One of the things that it has always been exciting to me, I've joked about it with some of my team, is I'd love to see Telamon be a Harvard Business School case study. And so what would be a case study about, right? The case study always is highlighting something. From my standpoint, the element that I'd love for us to be able to be so excellent at is around the people, is around the talent. So that, wow, here's a company that is a, run-of-the-mill, mid-sized company in Indiana, kind of easy to get lost in some sense, but are we doing something in terms of how we're developing our talent and building a place where people want to work, people will stay there kind of long-term? We're a second-generation family business. We also have a number of second-generation employees whose parents worked with my dad and who are now working with me, right? And we see that with siblings and with aunts and uncles in our business. That's so encouraging to me, right? Such a vote of confidence that a family is willing to say, hey, we trust you. We trust you to put food on the table for us on a regular basis. And you did that for the first generation. We think you can do that for another generation.
Wow.
And so being able to build that out over time, but also being able to do that on a global scale, to me would be really cool and exciting.
And when you think about talent development, because there's a lot of philosophy right now, there's this war on talent, there's trying to acquire talent. This generation thinks about their working life balance way different.
Yeah.
What are some things that you guys are focused on and sensitive to that you're trying to figure out when we think about this next generation of talent?
One of the things that we are trying to do, and I don't know if we're going to be successful at this, we're working on this, and so the jury's out. We try to preach and practice this idea of having really candid conversations with folks. Candid in the sense that from an employer standpoint, I want to be brutally honest with you about your career path and career development, including with the bad news, including saying, hey, look, we think you're fantastic in this role. We'd love to have you in this role for eternity. We don't see you necessarily going to the next role. And so am I comfortable enough as a company to be able to say that to an employee? And similarly, if we can lead the way as a company leading into that conversation, can we have our employees be comfortable enough and honest enough to be able to say back, hey, look, I love working here. I love what I'm doing in this role. 3 years from now, I'd love to be at a different company. Or I'd love to be in a different role that Telamon doesn't have. Great. Because if you're good and we're good, we can have that conversation very honestly, and we can help you, and you can help us. We can have a social contract that says for the next 3 years, you're going to bust your tail, and we're going to pour into you. And by the way, I'm also going to utilize my network to help you land that next job, because if we do this very openly, it won't be a surprise for us. We can plan for it as well, right? That's good from a company standpoint. And it's tough, and it's scary, and we're not there yet. We've had some success stories. We've had some failures trying to have these candid conversations, but that's what we're trying to build out.
I tell people when they interview for this job here, and people that are here, that one or two things are going to happen. Either this is a stepping stone, or you're going to retire here.
Yeah, right.
Now, in the marketing space, to suggest that somebody's probably going to retire from a startup company is just not the reality.
That's right.
The reality is you said it best. I'm like, I want to pour into you and give you everything that I got. I'll teach you everything that I know, everything that that we can do to make you better. Because while you're here, then that's going to give you so much, and it gives us so much. And then it equips you to go do something amazing. And I'm always telling people, like, the moment that you realize this here at Mojo Up is no longer a get-to job, then it's time for us to have the conversation to say, what does it look like to get you to a place where you can get up every single day and love it? And I'm so passionate about doing that, but getting people to feel comfortable that that's how it will actually go down when they walk through the door and say, okay, I need a transition plan. And now we've been put to the test, and we've done that for people. And I'm excited because more companies are having this conversation, because it doesn't make sense for employees to be miserable at their job.
That's right.
There's so many jobs and opportunities out there, but knowing that they can have the confidence that they can ultimately do that, and you guys are leading that way.
And I think trying to make sure that there's also kind of a trust and understanding that, look, it really can be good for us as a company for you to go off onto that next role, right?
100%.
It's a small world. We're going to cross paths again. There's going to be opportunities to work
Just
together.
do it the right way.
That's right. That's right.
This
So
is
yeah,
right.
there should be incentives all the way around.
One of the last questions that I'm curious about is a CEO, what's your day look like? What's your week look like? And how you structure your day, the way that you work with your leadership team, how you focus. What does that look like for somebody in your role?
Yeah.
And also kind of like how many employees you have, so maybe that gives some scope too.
Sure. Yeah. So we're about 2,500 associates globally. We have big chunks in Mexico, in North Macedonia, and in India. And then what's interesting is that we also have several hundred across the U.S. So we only have about 150 folks in Indiana, even though we're headquartered here. Because of the nature of our work, we have a lot of field force all across the country. For me, again, this is just a reflection of my own personality. So I love spending Friday afternoon, probably between 4 to 6, is my planning for the next week. And so I'll map out the next week. I make kind of effectively a time budget for myself of what I want to do each day and how many hours I'm allocating to it. And I track my time pretty religiously. And so that way I can look back over the past weeks and months and say, hey, am I allocating my time to the places I want to be allocating my time to? And so once I do that, I have kind of the plan for the week, and I'll have my list for the day. And generally speaking, I don't go to sleep until the list is done, right? I mean, that's just kind of how I try to operate. Now, that doesn't always happen that way, but that gives me kind of these short-term bursts of here's what I'm shooting for, here's what I need to accomplish each day. And as you know, every day is going to be different, but I am one of those people, and there's many out there that I derive an immense amount of satisfaction from crossing something off the list. So got to make that happen.
All right. Well, it's always crazy when we do these because time goes so fast, and I'm enjoying this conversation. But this is one of my favorite things to do and share with our community is our Mojo Up hot seat, and that is a quick answer. So here's the deal: I'm going to ask a question. And as quick and concise of an answer. There are no wrong answers because these are simply your answers. So Mojo Up hot seat, here we go. Your favorite place to vacation?
First thing that came to my mind was Tahiti.
I've been there. I got to go there. Favorite food or restaurant to eat at?
Boba is my favorite food. I love boba.
A brand that you love?
Merrill.
What
Yeah,
is
Merrill
it?
shoes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite professional sports team?
Baltimore Orioles.
I just got to ask how.
Yeah. So I love baseball. Grew up in Indiana. Grew up cheering for the Dodgers because the Dodgers were one of the few teams that had a presence in Taiwan when my dad was growing up. Married a gal from Baltimore. And so when we got married, she, as a Baltimore girl, this is tough, you're a sports guy, you know this, she adopted the Indianapolis Colts as her football team. And I said, if you're going to adopt the Colts, the least I can do is adopt the Orioles. So I adopted the Orioles 20 years ago. We've been fans ever since.
How about that? Favorite college?
I'll go with my alma mater, Penn.
And why Penn, not Stanford?
Well, I love Stanford, and Stanford has much better sports to cheer for.
Yeah.
But yeah, just had formative experiences at Penn. Met my wife at Penn, so.
It has a special place. Favorite TV show or series that you like now or are used to?
Well, we've been watching a ton of Seinfeld, and Frasier. And Frasier reruns, so yeah, Frasier's a good one.
Favorite athlete, entertainer, or actor, actress?
Probably not an excitement with Peyton Manning. I really admire Peyton Manning. So
Are you a Mac or PC guy?
definitely PC.
So iPhone or Android then?
Definitely Android.
Oh my gosh, how do you operate in life?
No, absolutely. Gotta go Android. Not a Mac fan, not an Apple fan.
The gaming station that you played as a kid?
The original Nintendo. Yeah.
Favorite type of music?
Probably would have to go with contemporary Christian music.
A book you would recommend?
We talked about it, Thinking Fast and Slow. It's a great book. It's a long book, but it's a good one.
A nonprofit or a cause that you love to support?
KIP Indy charter schools. One of the best, and you're familiar with this, I know we've talked about this, but one of the best charter schools in town.
The last question I have, so you're officially off the hot seat. Got one last closing question before we close this up. I always tell people that, if you think about it, everybody has a start date and a finish date, and there's this dash in between. And there comes a point in time when it's all over, and they're going to talk about Stanley Chen. What do you want them to say?
I think the the thing that would be most exciting to me would be that I would be a leader that would help people understand that there's more important things in life than the job. And again, it's, for me, it's faith, family, work in that order. And it's going to be different things for different people, but for almost everyone, work is not first. And so that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
And so we've got to be able to figure out a way to do the job, but understand the priorities.
Man, thanks for stopping by, having a conversation with me. I appreciate your transparency, the authenticity by which you operate. You only have one thing left to do.
Love it. It is a wrap.